And welcome to Capital Talk, a program we hope will have an impact on the future of Kenya. Now more than ever, I'm Geoffrey Kent. Now if you've been watching The Bench all this week, you know we're talking about success stories. Kenyans who have gone out of their way to do amazing things with Kenya in mind. Like my guest today, folks, if you hear this man's story, it's an ongoing movie, no doubt. He was born, check this out, 1942. That makes him 70 years old this year. By the way, he grew up in a place back in the day that was called Thompson's Falls, now Nyahururu. Went to Nyahururu School and then Kenton College and then a school called Duke of York. We're talking the 40s and 50s, folks, remember? Soon later became Lenana. He was expelled, didn't give up, got on a bike, rode to Cape Town. Folks, that's not even the story. He's 70 years old and he says, each day is like a new day to him. Never gets exhausted, leads by example, and he formed a company back in '62. You know the name as soon as I'll tell you. A&K, Abercrombie & Kent, #1 travel and tour company in the world. Sales last year, $500 million US. Wow, sit back. This is success with a capital S. Geoffrey Kent.
Hi,
good to see you, man.
And you too. Very good to see you
goodness. Too. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but let's go back. Nyahururu.
Yes.
So it was called Thompson's Falls then?
Thompson's Falls School. Well, we had the farm in South Kinnicop, and I went to Thompson's Falls School when I was like 5.5, 6. And I remember getting there, and my mother drove away, and I remember I couldn't tie up my shoelaces. It's a lasting memory of my first day at school.
You must have cried.
Oh, all the time. All the time. From then I went to Kenton College.
Yep. Which still exists?
Still exists.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And,
I want to take my son there one day.
Good. Yeah, it's a very good school.
Good school.
Certainly was then.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, still to this day. And then Duke of York.
And then Duke of York, which is today Lenana School, you know. I was in Delamere House and it was we had red.
We had
red shirts, Delamere.
Were there any black people then?
None then, no.
None?
None.
Zero?
Zero, no.
Was it a big school? Was it a...
Yes, it was a big, very big school.
For the settler families, for the farm kids?
Yes.
And, wow.
Yeah.
How was it disciplined then?
Very, very awesome. Very, very tough.
Really?
Everyone, you were caned by the head boy of your house. Yeah. Could cane you and did cane you, like every fourth day. The housemaster could cane you, and finally the headmaster could cane you. So you could go like through 3 corporal punishments, in the space of a month, depending on how bad you did.
And how was it tradition for rugby and football and all the other sports?
We always beat Prince of Wales.
Always?
Always. They'll say the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess you were the Prince of Wales. Yeah. We were very sporting, and I loved him. And Duke of York was great because we had the whole Bundu area where we used to hide. And I grew up with people like, Alan Root was Prince of Wales, but Richard Leakey, he was the Duke of York with me.
With you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us a couple of other names.
Richard Leakey, Alan. I'm trying to think of some others who are famous. I can't bring them straight to mind. I think.
Was Richard ahead of you or behind you?
Hmm?
Richard, was he ahead of you?
He was just behind me.
Just behind you?
Yes, yes.
Was he a good kid?
Richard, yeah, very smart. Really? Talks a lot, more than me. I'm having lunch with him tomorrow, so I hope he's going to watch this.
Excellent. And then you were expelled?
Yes. That was the first low point of my life.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it didn't deter you, right? Because a lot of people would have been discouraged. And
I think in life the key thing is rather like in rugby. When you pull down, you've just got to get out fast and fight back. So
dust yourself off and
get going again. Yeah. So that was a story.
Wow. We're going to fast forward to when you decided to start this travel company. I mean, this is 62, even before independence.
That's correct.
Before independence.
What
made you want to do this?
Well, I suppose it was when Kenya got self-government that we lost all of our farms in 62. So again, it was a low moment, but again, we dusted ourselves off and we had lost everything we grew up with. Everything had gone. Yeah. And we came to Nairobi and we had to think, we'd all grown up with Karen Downey, famous company. Yes. So I had to have a name that sounded like that. So first of all, I came up with Aardvark, AA, because I want to be top of the yellow pages. Right. But I couldn't get a logo out of an anteater. So we switched it to Abercrombie & Kent. But there's no Abercrombie.
No, it's
never
just
was.
Kent.
Yes, never was, never has been, nothing. Abercrombie & Kent, we paid £100, took the farmland over, KBH 482, I remember the plates today, and we're in business. Had a little office in Vedic House, like me. Yeah. That's it, my mother and father, and that was it.
My Was it difficult, or when was your first big break?
We had, I think the big break was when I invented the luxury tent safari with ice machines. And I told you I went to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst after Duke of York. And there I took all my military background and created to launch these mobile tent safaris. And I had this slogan, which hunt with a camera, not with a gun. And so we were the first to move big time into photography and not hunting. And I had these beautiful camps with ice machines, and we do 30-day safaris, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. And then I suppose my first big break was trying to look for customers. Very hard to find a client. I used to sit outside the New Stanley Hotel, the Thorn Tree.
The old Thorn Tree.
Yeah, have a milkshake or whatever I had, and sit. And I told them, I hadn't traveled at all, but I told the very rich people were Texans in those days. They'd discovered oil. And they had big hats and big boots, and I'd recognize them. So I waited. One day, I saw somebody who had to be a Texan, so I went up to him and said, "Are you from Texas?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Great. Would you like a safari?" And he said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind." So I go off and I plan this 30-day trip, work out all the money, and it came to like $3,200, which was so much money. I thought, how can I say that? So I give him the whole pitch, and he said, "Well, how much is it?" So I can't get 3,200, so I say 2,950. And he looked at me and said, "Is that all?" And I looked at him and said, "Each." So then I realized that actually making money can be easier than you think sometimes.
And he paid that?
Yes, and we did the great trip, and I told him later, but he said, "No, keep it. You're a young guy, starting." I think he said, "That's very funny." I told him, that's very funny.
Yeah.
And then I worked out I got to get to America. I have to get to this.
Why? Because yes,
because after this trip, I realized this is it. I can't fool around here. Yeah. I got to get to Texas. I got to get to America. Yes. But I had no money.
Right.
And there's exchange control in those days. So how'd you get there? So I went to Sabina, and I said, "I'll help load all your flowers onto the Sabina planes, because half freight, half if you give me a free seat." And that's what I did. And there's a guy called Colonel Danvers, who gave me a free seat on the plane. I got to Brussels, and they gave me another free seat to America. I get to America, and then I start to move and see friends and build up my class.
Yeah. And then down the line, you managed to convince a Rockefeller to come here.
Well, I'm sure in those days you had to, living in Kenya then, I had to read everything, right? So I used to read, I read Time and Newsweek. And then I'd see on the cover of Time, I think it was, the richest man in the world is David Rockefeller. I said, "Well, he should be my client. That's who I need. I need the richest guy in the world." So I literally got on a plane, like I just told you, got to New York, went to the Rockefeller Center, right? Yes. And he had the big Chase Manhattan. Correct. I said, "See, I see you're building a Chase Bank in Nairobi, right?" And he said, "Yes." Well, he wouldn't see me. He's one of his aides. Yeah. Joseph Reed, actually, was the guy's name. And I said, "I'd love to meet David Rockefeller," and try to meet him. Eventually, I met David Rockefeller. Long story. David Rockefeller came. I was his guide. Actually, we took him to Lake Turkana, and actually, Richard Leakey was with me on that trip. Richard came with me on that.
Is that right?
Yeah, he did. And we took him swimming with the crocodiles.
Whoa.
And I had lunch with David like 2 months ago. He's like 95 now. Mm-hmm. He remembered every single part, and he just loved Africa. We introduced Africa, and he talked and talked and talked about it.
And at the end of the day, it's all about word of mouth, isn't it? Because if they have a good time here, they'll tell their friends.
And then he brought 105 of his best friends, all leading bankers of the world, to the 1972 IMF conference here in Nairobi. And I handled the whole thing as a young Kenyan.
Yeah.
And that was my big break. Wow. So that was fun. But it's all because I went out because I'd read in Time and followed him.
Yes.
I just wasn't handed one day the IMF conference.
Yeah.
You've got to pursue your dream.
Exactly.
And work.
And you have to lead from the front, Jeff. That's the bottom line. You have to lead from the front, because even after the 100 bankers, you still bring people to this day.
Absolutely. We brought Bill Gates to this country. I did the first Bill Gates safari. We brought the Prince of Wales to this country, and the children. So, we are always building, bringing, a lot of the movie stars come with us.
Denzel
Washington come with us. Jimmy Carter came.
Cameron Diaz.
Hillary Clinton, And so we keep on pushing and getting important people to come, because they tell everybody.
Correct.
And that's what gives Kenya its great name.
Yes.
Everybody always, when you bring it up, they say knowingly, "Oh, what a great country. Oh, that changed our life."
Is that right?
That changed our life. Just about everyone I bring say, "That trip changed our life." And us Kenyans, we didn't know that.
That's really good to hear, Jeff, because a lot of the stories that come out of this place, I mean, everyone loves the 4 Ds, as I call them, or a friend of mine used to call them: death, disease, despair, and destruction. That's all they like to hear about Kenya. But it's good to know that there are some great people out there who tell some great stories.
But you got to keep on doing it. I give interviews all day long. I did the Wall Street Journal last week. 5.4 million people saw a brief story about me. Always raised in Kenya, started Abercrombie in Kenya, come to Kenya. An implicit underlying thing. And I go there all the time. So he's going, it must be fine.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going to go to places, of course. Yeah. And so, even today in Kenya, we have a very big office here. We're probably the largest safari operator in Kenya today. And we do big conferences here. We actually put up, we've got enough tents for 100 people, for local companies to bring all their directors in. Conferences we do here. We have Olanana, the camp in the Masai Mara. So we're very much about corporations in Kenya should try and hold their annual meetings in Kenya and bring them here. Then we have all these people going back saying, what a great, you changed our life. This is a great country. And that's what we should be doing.
Has it changed over the years, Jeff? I'm sure you look around this place and you say, my goodness.
Of course, it took me 2 hours in traffic to come and see you today.
There you go.
It used to take me 20 minutes. Now, that's the biggest change in the traffic. That's the biggest thing I find.
They keep saying it's getting better.
I haven't seen it. No, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, the wonderful thing about Kenya is, you were looking at this hotel. I grew up in this hotel.
Yes, you did.
Jack and Tubby block were here, built in 1937. So
you remember
I grew up here.
You remember the blocks?
Everything. Both of them. Very well, of course. Of course, my mother used to dress me up. Oh, these are the blocks. They own you, Stanley. There's a big deal.
Really?
Yeah. And so I grew up in the Thega Club and all that.
Yeah.
And I learned how to ride as a very young guy.
That's right, because you were a +5 polo player, superstar.
Yeah. I started as captain Nairobi Polo Club, and learned there. Well, I learned in the British Isles. I'd been playing since I rode horses on the South Kinnicop to just see our friends. So I was always interested. And so I started really at 16. I was captain of the Sandhurst team. I went on from there. And when I came back to Kenya full-time, captain of Nairobi Polo Club, I took the first teams from Kenya to the US. I brought US teams to Kenya. And then I said one day, I want to go and win the US Open. Sitting in Nairobi Polo Club. Everyone's saying, what are you talking about? I had 4 horses in Nairobi Polo Club. But I was saying, no, I want to win the US Open. So I said that was my target. And I entered in 1976, came last out of 12. Bottom, by mile. Yeah. I entered 77, came last again. In fact, it was so bad that no one would come and watch the TV. Like, you remember like that crazy skier, he used to ski off and fall on his head. Yeah. Everyone came and laughed, right? And then in 1978, it was the Field of Dreams. I put together a team, and I won the US Open.
With your team from?
No, not from, I took it from all over the world.
Right.
But I played, of course, I was captain of the team.
Yes.
But I won the US Open in 78, and I won the US Gold Cup. First time ever, the 2 top tournaments in America being won by a single team. Whoa. I did it in 78, and then went on to win it again in 82. I then captained Prince Charles's polo team, the Windsor Park team. I played all over the world with him, and then finally I won the World Cup, the Open Championships in 91. And then I had a huge accident in 93 where I was nearly killed. Didn't, as you can see, not quite. Yeah, takes a lot to write off a Kenyan. Survive traffic and polo.
Yeah, exactly.
Sit here with you.
You're good to go.
But so polo was a huge part of my life.
Is that right?
Yeah, I just loved it. And I traveled the whole world. I won the Indian Open, and I traveled everywhere playing polo. And where I built the brand name, and where I met really wealthy people who came to Kenya. So in the early days, they played polo with me, and then went on safari.
There you go.
That's how I did it. Yeah.
Jeff, I want to talk more about that after the break. And you mentioned the name Windsor a moment ago.
Yes.
Does it have anything to do with Windsor here, Windsor Golf and Country Club?
Totally and completely.
I want to hear that story. You and John Mishuki were friends. John. Yes. Exactly. And also, the Kenya of tomorrow, do you have hope? Because a lot of people lose a lot of hope in this country. They keep saying, well, we're going 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Is there a lot of hope for this place? You're 70 and still full of energy. Tell me that after the break.
Fine.
Geoff Kent, folks, my goodness, he's like the Energizer Bunny. He's 70 years old, still has the energy, and at the end of the day, still loves this country more than anything. Gets up in the morning, goes to work, brings tours here. Despite all the doom and gloom, Geoff Kent is bringing all the good folks to tell the good stories about this great place. Do not even think of going away, folks. The bench is just warming up. Back in a moment.